Ever wonder what it's like to be the ultimate loner in a fantasy world? Meet Haruka, a guy with 0 friends, a bag of random junk, and a mission to survive. From goblin battles to magic mishaps, he's about to turn worthless into unstoppable. Are you ready for a wild adventure? Let's dive in. The story begins with Haruka, a boy hiding from a group of goblins who are busy preparing their meal. Trying to slip away unnoticed, Haruka accidentally snaps a tree branch, instantly drawing all the goblins' attention. He bolts, running as fast as he can. But as the goblins close in, Haruka smirks. He suddenly leaps into the air, revealing his trap a hidden pitfall. The goblins tumble straight into it, just as Haruka planned. He tosses off his hoodie, proudly admiring the trap he dug earlier. The scene shifts, showing he's been living alone in this strange world for a while. Cut to Haruka in a classroom, casually reading a manga during lunch break. He calls himself a loner, not just in this world, but in the regular one too. He divides his classmates into categories: the delinquents, gyrus, jocks, nerds, class reps, and everyone else. Naturally, he doesn't fit into any of these groups. Just as he rests his head on his desk, something strange happens. A mysterious circle starts glowing beneath him. Chaos erupts in the classroom, and Haruka opens his eyes to see the mayhem. At first, he's thrilled to see a magic circle, but then his face falls, remembering the harshness of other worlds. He tries everything, opening the door, windows, even kicking them, but they won't budge. Desperately, he hurls a chair at the door, realizing it's all a trap. As the magic circle starts teleporting his classmates, Haruka scrambles into the ceiling's air duct, only to be caught by the circle's reach and teleported anyway. Haruka finds himself in a strange white void. He expects to meet some overweight king or a beautiful princess, but instead, an old, confused-looking man with a white beard approaches him. Haruka assumes he must be the god of this new world. A massive wall of skills appears in front of him, and as Haruka gets ready to choose, all the valuable skills vanish, leaving behind only useless ones. Frustrated, he browses the leftover skills, growing more and more annoyed. He complains to the old man, who calmly waves his staff, shattering the skill wall. Suddenly, all the worthless skills pour into Haruka's status. He's then transported to a forest, where he finds a magical bag. To his surprise, the bag has unlimited storage. It's filled with random items, which Haruka calls leftovers. He picks out some gloves and a cloak, intrigued by their look. Haruka tries to check his status window, but instead, a message pops up instructing him to roll dice. He does, landing 2 MS. Panicking, he assumes the M means minus and dreads the worst. But when he checks his status, he discovers one of his skills is maxed out, meaning the M stands for max. Relieved, he continues exploring and notices 2 additional skills: living alone with no friends and unable to make friends. It dawns on him he's destined to be a loner, even in this new world. Determined to build his own house, Haruka ventures deeper into the forest. As the underbrush thickens, he grows uneasy, knowing he's defenseless if a monster shows up. He digs through his bag and finds a special lens that allows him to see the stats of everything around him. Haruka begins scouting the area, collecting mushrooms, which he stashes in his bag. Eventually, he finds a lake, happily drinking its water, and stumbles upon a nearby cave. Haruka tiptoes in, apologizing to any monsters that might live there, but finds it empty. Grinning, he claims it as his home and uses his temperature magic to light a fire before checking his stats again and drifting off to sleep. On day 2, Haruka wakes up, pleased to find no monsters attacked him overnight. Starving, he whips up a beef and mushroom meal, which turns out to be surprisingly tasty. After breakfast, he wonders what to do next and begins collecting supplies for his shelter. Suddenly, he senses movement. 2 goblins are nearby. He checks their stats with his lens, then readies himself for battle. His wooden stick glows with magical power, and Haruka launches himself at the first goblin, knocking it out with a blow to the head. The second goblin charges, but Haruka easily dodges and blasts it into a tree with magic. As the sun sets, Haruka reflects on his first victory and stumbles back to his cave, exhausted. He cooks mushrooms for dinner, checks his stats, and happily notices he's leveled up. By day 3, Haruka is sick of eating mushrooms for every meal but forces them down anyway. Stepping outside, he starts hunting for meat but finds nothing. Frustrated, he practices his magic instead, running so fast it feels like teleporting. He also sharpens his sword skills, easily defeating 2 goblins. Feeling confident, Haruka thinks he can take on 3 goblins, but when he faces them, they look stronger than expected. He wisely runs back to his cave, planning to hunt goblins by day and train his magic by night. On day 5, Haruka successfully takes down a goblin with a single strike and installs a door for his cave to keep out intruders. Later, he spots a rabbit and chases it for some much-needed meat, but just as he catches it, he hears a noise nearby. It turns out to be his classmates. Haruka hides, using his clairvoyant sight to check the surroundings. To his surprise, all the different groups from his class are scattered nearby. Among them is his crush, who's with the class rep group. Memories of his awkward past with her in first grade flood back. He almost approaches to say hi, but stops himself. He's chosen his path alone, free and determined to conquer this new world his way. Haruka quickly dives into the bushes, trying to hide from his friends who heard a noise and are now searching the area. One of his classmates grows suspicious and starts moving toward the bushes. Haruka feels his heart race, but just as the boy is about to check, a rabbit leaps out, startling him. Relieved, Haruka watches the group leave. The boys later gather near a river, and Haruka quietly listens in. They begin talking about inappropriate fantasies involving the class rep. Haruka, instead, thinks fondly of his crush, admiring how she's always managed class affairs since elementary school. Haruka then notices the boys have captured a student named Tanaka, who they've been using like a human search engine. When they finally leave, Haruka sneaks back to his hideout. He cooks mushrooms for dinner, yet again, and checks his stats. He's dismayed to see his loner level has increased, likely from avoiding his classmates. However, his overall skill level remains at 3, hindered by his lack of mastery in both jack-of-all-trades and dummy skills. Frustrated, he uses his Master of None skill, which allows him to transform his cave into a spectacular room. Though he still can't stay focused on one task for long, he sits down to eat his poorly cooked mushrooms. On the 7th day, a commotion wakes him up. Rushing outside, Haruka finds a group of nerds battling goblins. He activates his lens, analyzing their stats, and quickly realizes they're at a higher level than he is. Ready to jump in and level up, he suddenly senses danger. 2 more goblins are creeping up behind the nerds. Remembering his good times at school with them, he leaps into the fight, and with one strike of his stick, he takes down both goblins. The nerds are stunned to see Haruka there. While heading to Haruka's cave, the nerd group thanks him for saving them. Haruka welcomes them inside, and they're shocked to see a stunning, well-decorated room hidden within the cave. They marvel at the transformation, complimenting Haruka on his space. He offers them some juice and casually asks about the other classmates. Oda, one of the nerds, begins sharing his experience since reincarnating into this new world. Some classmates were amazed by the new reality, while others broke down in tears. Oda explains how their group was the first to figure out how to access the status window, while others remained frozen in disbelief. Just as things seemed to calm down, a group of goblins suddenly appears, ready to attack. Panic spreads among the class, including the delinquents and class reps, but the nerd group is the only one that steps up to fight. With the help of the jocks, they charge in and defeat the goblins in one swift move. Afterward, they all gather near a river to seek safety from further ambushes. The nerds take charge, using their isekai knowledge to help set up camps, while the class reps take over cooking and catching fish. For a while, everyone works together in harmony. However, after a few days, the class reps grow tired of their responsibilities and decide to leave. The vice rep tries to reason with them, but they ignore the plea and walk off. Soon after, the delinquent group follows, and their departure causes others to scatter as well, leaving the camp less united. From that point forward, only the class rep, the nerds, and a few others pulled their weight. The rest of the classmates just lazed around, while the nerd group was left to battle goblins on their own. Oda then told Haruka about the charm and puppeteer skills the delinquents had picked up in the White Room. The nerds grew suspicious, noticing the delinquents sneaking out at night to fight goblins, leveling up their stats. When the nerds overheard them plotting inappropriate plans involving the class rep, they immediately went to the vice rep and explained everything. Upon hearing this, the vice rep decided it was time to level up herself. She approached the delinquents who had bad intentions for her, but in an instant, the tables turned. The delinquents were on the ground, immobilized. The nerds used their seal ability to block the delinquents' charm skill, forcing them to flee the camp. However, not long after, the delinquents launched a surprise attack, setting the camp ablaze and injuring others. With everything in ruins, the class rep and others blamed the nerd group for the disaster. Only the vice rep defended them, but as the minority, the nerds decided it was safer to leave. After hearing their story, Haruka admired their bravery and threw them a mushroom feast in celebration. The next morning, Haruka wished the nerds good luck on their journey, but they asked him to join them. Despite wanting to, Haruka, in a heroic manner, declined, explaining he couldn't because of his cursed state. After they left, Haruka decided to visit the other camps, only to find them deserted. As he explored, he sensed footsteps nearby. Activating his optical view ability, he saw the class reps in the distance. When they spotted him, Haruka quickly tried to hide, but they chased after him. Eventually, Haruka stopped when he heard them pleading for his help. The girls explained that they wanted to apologize to the nerd group. Suspicious, Haruka questioned their motives. The girls then began to cry, asking for his help to become stronger. Checking their stats, Haruka was stunned. They were so focused on basic survival, like walking and worrying, that they hadn't leveled up at all. As Haruka considered backing out of the situation, the class vice rep and his crush suddenly appeared. Lost in thought, Haruka hadn't noticed her until she shouted to get his attention. Meanwhile, the delinquent group sat around a campfire, plotting to return to the old camp, their intentions as vile as ever. Once the class rep catches Haruka's attention, he panics. He doesn't know what to say or even know her name, despite being in the same class since elementary school. The class rep, always nice to him, can't believe he never bothered to learn her name. A moment later, the other girls show up, having followed the class rep's orders. The popular girls stand behind Haruka, looking like they're sharing one brain brain cell. Class rep assumes Haruka did something to them. He wants to claim innocence, but his skill unintentionally turned the girls into his servants, and he's clueless about fixing it. Haruka tries to explain without sounding guilty, but no one believes him, so he gives up and turns to leave. However, class rep forces him to stay to check on Shimazaki. Fortunately, a little shaking frees her from the subjugation. She tells the class rep she's fine, and Haruka thinks he's free to go, but the class rep insists on finding out how the subjugation happened. While the girls talk, Haruka, left by a tree, starts practicing his magic out of boredom. Haruka plans to expand his house, but messes up trying to build a basement, accidentally burying himself neck deep in the ground. He's stuck until the class rep finds him, shocked to see him buried after she only asked him to wait a few minutes. She helps him out, apologizing for not trusting him. As Shimazaki explained, he was just trying to help. Haruka doesn't recall offering to help everyone, but the girls are already thanking him, so he goes along with it. Haruka wants to head home, but the girls get mad because he's leaving them in the wilderness without help. Class rep realizes Haruka has a home and asks about it. He explains he built it in his spare time. The class rep is amazed he built a house while they struggled to set up camp, and the other girls are equally impressed. They ask how many people it can hold, and he says about 200 if he moves some furniture and empties the pool. Class rep is jealous but politely asks if they can stay the night as they're homeless. Haruka freaks out. Hosting a whole class of girls is overwhelming but calms down and leads them to his house. Thanks to his skills, he knows the way through the woods. Once they arrive, the girls are amazed by his house's grandeur, thrilled to have a roof and indoor plumbing after so long. As soon as Haruka mentions there's a bath, the girls frantically strip down and run towards it, right in front of him. Overwhelmed, Haruka sets up a tent to be alone and prepares to sleep. Just then, the class rep enters, wanting to talk. She thanks him for his help, explaining that after the nerds and gym bros left, the girls have been struggling, but now, after a bath and a good meal, spirits are high again. Still, the class rep feels she's failed as a leader since she couldn't help the class alone. Haruka thinks she's being too hard on herself. She's been keeping the girls together. While she worries they just got lucky not running into monsters, Haruka reminds her that the nerds were well prepared for this situation, unlike her. Considering it's her first isekai experience, she's done well. The class rep feels better after hearing him out, though she still feels insignificant compared to Haruka's achievements. Wishing him good night, she heads back inside, but Haruka knows he won't be able to sleep after everything. The next morning, Haruka is woken by one of the girls, asking him to get up for breakfast. He groggily tries to sleep more, but she crawls on top of him, insisting he gets up. Reluctantly, Haruka asks what's for breakfast, expecting mushroom soup again. To his surprise, it's fish today, and in his excitement, he accidentally headbutts the girl. Though she's slightly hurt, Haruka couldn't care less. He's thrilled to finally eat something other than mushrooms. Class rep can't understand why Haruka is so excited about eating fish when he's lived next to the river all this time. Haruka admits he's just terrible at fishing. Curious how the girls manage it, he asks to see their method. Class rep agrees and takes Haruka to the river with a girl who has lightning magic. She electrocutes the water to catch fish, impressing Haruka. He begs her to do it again, and though she's reluctant, she agrees. Before she can throw the lightning ball, Haruka seals it with his packing skill, tossing it in the river to catch more fish, and even acquires lightning magic in the process. Class rep is shocked, so Haruka explains that by using his packing skill on elements, he can gain that kind of magic. While useful, Haruka still doesn't find it impressive, as he thinks his other skills are mostly useless. While the girls play in the river, Haruka sits with the class rep and asks what they plan to do next. She says they'll head for the nearest village to catch up with the nerds, but they need to level up first. Haruka offers to help them train. A bit later, the girls gather in the forest, and Haruka asks their current levels. They tell him they're all above level 15, leaving Haruka depressed since he's still only level 7. Doubting they even need his help, he gives them a test, pitting them against level 6 kobolds. The girls think it'll be easy, but are quickly defeated. The kobolds actually fought back. They regroup to rethink their strategy, and for some reason the meeting takes place in Haruka's magic tent. Haruka's tent expands to fit everyone, though he's still confused why they chose it. After some deliberation, the girls head back out, determined not to lose this time. Haruka appreciates their motivation, but doubts they'll win. Once they leave, the girl from earlier approaches Haruka to apologize for testing him that morning. She wanted to see if he'd take advantage of the situation. Now that he's given them shelter, food, and help with fighting, she feels she can trust him and promises to wake him with breakfast again tomorrow. Haruka is glad she trusts him, though he only knows her as Fish Girl. The next morning, Haruka happily accepts breakfast from Fish Girl. However, he overhears the girls planning to fight the kobolds for revenge. Before they leave, class rep stops them, insisting they train first or they'll lose again. She suggests starting with goblins, but the fight doesn't go well. Despite the loss, some girls still think they're ready, while others pretend to be sick to avoid fighting. Haruka doubts they'll succeed, but to his surprise, the girls learn from their mistakes and work together to defeat the kobolds. Class rep congratulates them, and Haruka is relieved, thinking he can return to his loner life. but class rep thanks him for agreeing to join them on their journey to the village. Haruka knows he never agreed, but she's insistent, so he gives in. A little later, they've packed and are ready to leave the forest. Haruka reminds them to stay alert for dangers. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, one of the boys from their class is running for his life. He trips over a rock, is cornered by his attacker, and gets strangled to death on the spot. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. If you enjoyed the journey, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more epic content. Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't miss out on the next video. There's always more fun, surprises, and challenges ahead. Until next time, stay awesome and keep exploring.